take it from here.
Okay, so I see Hannah, Emily, Erica, Ariel, and Aaron. And I kind of had this, I had a rule. I worked in the pulpit for 4 years, and sometimes people were on time and sometimes people were late. And I always felt like, you know, people would get there on time, and then we would start 10 minutes later because we always wanted to have a critical mass. And so we would almost like punish the people who actually showed up on time. So what I want to do is, you all got here on time. I'm going to assume the best of everybody else, like Don Lakaf Zachud. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But what I really want to do is honor the fact that you came here on time. So I know you just turned off your videos and you're all muted. So by now you're like eating your lunch and doing all this other stuff. But what I want you to do is tell me the one biggest challenge that you have in your work. If we could just kind of, maybe we'll start with Hannah, then Ariel, then Erica, then Emily, then Aaron, or as the Spirit moves you, so that to really honor the fact that you came here on time, I can speak to those challenges as we're going through the webinar, if that's okay with you.
Aaron, do you want to start for us?
All right, sorry, I was working to unclick all the things I just clicked.
Sorry.
The biggest challenge in my work, it's a broad question. I suppose I should have anticipated this because when I present, I typically like flipping the script also. I think one of the biggest challenges that I have right now is making sure there's time and space for all the different pieces that need to be addressed, to be thought through and addressed.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think like Aaron, it's a really broad question to think about what the biggest challenge is right now. But I think for me, it's that I've come to a new city, and it's a very insular city. It's a very small, well, not a small community, but it's tight knit, and people feel like they already know everyone. And I'm sitting here not knowing anyone, and I'm trying to build the Hillel and meet new students with this challenge of people not knowing how to introduce me properly because they don't know who I've already been and who I haven't met, and I don't even know where to begin. So I'm going to make it a people-based challenge as my biggest one.
That's great. What city, by the way?
Oh, I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Winnipeg, Manitoba. Okay. All right. Go Jets, right? That's the only thing I know about Winnipeg. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Who else has some challenges?
I can chime in. I think I might have been next on the list. My biggest challenge, as I'm sure we all have in Hillel work, is that students now are doing internships and involved in 100 clubs and taking on 7 leadership positions instead of just 1. Like, why is my ask of them more relevant than anyone else's and more important? And just really trying to make the content as appealing as possible to like fight that other urge, or just the urge to like sit in bed and take the breather time that they need.
Great. That's great. Thank you.
I can go. I think a challenge for me is kind of feeling disconnected from the campuses. So I'm in communications here, but our job is to kind of share the good news and everything that's happening on campus. But it's hard to do that when we're sitting here on headquarters and just like feeling far away from everyone else.
Great. Great. I'm just taking notes here. That was great. Thank you. Let's take a couple more and then we'll dive in. I'm assuming anyone who's not speaking just has no problems in work, which is why you have an hour to kill during lunch. And that's cool too. Like what we can, then we'll just have a good time. But if anyone else has a problem you want to share, that'd be great.
What was I apologize, I was late. Oh, I just saw the chat. The biggest challenge in our work. Thank you. I am Michelle. The biggest challenge in our work is, I think, staying relevant to students, and like figuring out like, well, this is what works, and then the next day it just doesn't anymore for whatever reason, because things constantly change.
Great. Great. Maybe take one more if anyone else wants to throw one in there.
This is Erica. In my context, we are perpetually in startup mode. So I'm always trying to toe the line between being responsive to everything that comes up excitingly and opportunistically in startup mode, and also operationalizing the things that we do so that it feels strategic and not haphazard.
Great. Great. All right. These are fantastic. And if anyone else chimes in, with other problems or issues that they're dealing with, please feel free to throw them in, and I'll try to incorporate them into the webinar. I'm going to screen share. Wait, I'm going to screen share now. Where is it? Here. All right. Let me know if you can see the screen once we get going. Can people see that? Okay. So it's going to be good because we're going to talk about milkshakes, which I wouldn't have done I hope you've eaten already or you have some snacks. And if that's the case, just make sure you're muted. So we talked about milkshakes. I'm going to start with a story. And on the top left, you're going to see my son, Micah. And that's a cookie that at the time was about the size of his head. He's grown a little bit since then. And we were at brunch one Sunday morning. So I worked at a pulpit for 4 years. And I guess I had forgotten that people eat brunch on Sunday mornings. But brunch is fantastic. I don't know if you all work on Sunday mornings, but if you do, just take a Sunday off, and brunch is the best meal ever. So once I left the pulpit, first week in July, Sunday morning, we go out to this beautiful restaurant, on the water. I live in Providence, Rhode Island. We're on the water in Warren, Rhode Island, and we're having food, and Micah decided he was going to have an oatmeal raisin cookie and some milk. And this guy, you see this older man, this isn't an actual picture of the guy because it would have been weird to take a picture of the guy. I didn't want him to think that we thought he was cool. But this guy pulls up in a Bentley convertible. Now, for those who don't know, Bentley convertible is about $250,000. And we drove there in our used Honda CRV that we were trying to sell. We were going to sell it and get a slightly bigger car, but it was a used Honda CRV. And this guy drives in a Bentley convertible. And the top is down because it's a beautiful summer Sunday morning. And my son Micah says, Abba. And I said, yeah, what? I wonder what's the problem. He said, oh my God, that poor man. And I said, what do you mean that poor man, Micah? What's wrong? And he said, Abba, that man only has half a car. Because he sees that the top is not on the convertible, and he thinks, oh my God, what a poor soul that this guy drives around with half a car, and hear how lucky we are. And I said, okay, let me play along with this. So Micah, what should we do? How can we help this man? And he said, well, we can give him our Honda CRV. And I thought it was just so perfect that he went right into his toolkit of what he knows that we have. He knows that we have a Honda CRV, and he knows that that's how we can help this guy. And the thing is, it's cute when a 4-year-old does it. It's cute when a 4-year-old can say, I have a problem. I have a solution to this guy's problem. I already know what his problem is, and I've diagnosed the problem, and I have the solution for him right off the bat. But when we do it as Jewish educators, when we do it as folks in the spiritual, religious landscape, when we're really dealing with people's souls, when we look at people and identify, oh, I know that person's problem. They woke up this morning and said, gosh, I'm not Jewish enough. Or gosh, I'm dating somebody who's not from the tribe. Or gosh, I'm unaffiliated. Or God, these are, when we ascribe these problems onto people and then give them our prepackaged solutions, because those are the products that we have in our toolkit, not only is it bad business, but it's bad faith. And that's why I want to share some of this Torah that I've been learning with all of you. So when we talk about jobs to be done theory, the major focus, like a lot of times when we talk about innovation, the focus is on products. How can we innovate our products? How can we add more features to whatever product we have? So maybe you have you teach, let's say you lead services, right? You lead Friday night services and the attendance is going down. So before actually asking anybody, hey, what job is this service doing for you? You say, oh, you know what we need? We need a guitar. And then you add the guitar and nobody comes. And then you say, oh, it's at the wrong time. Let's do it at 5 o'clock and then we'll do a late service too. Oh, let's live stream it. That's the problem. People just can't get there. Oh, you know what? It's not that it's Friday night. Let's do it on Sunday afternoon. You start messing with all of the features and aspects of the product. But by the time you start, and I say you, it's me, it's every large company, it's Blockbuster, it's all companies who are so product focused. What you end up losing sight of is the problems that people are trying to solve in their lives. You end up losing focus on the progress that they want to make in their lives towards new goals. So there's this famous quote that unfortunately took like 50 years for the business community and the innovation community to actually listen to, where Theodore Levitt said, people don't want a 1/4 inch drill, they want a 1/4 inch hole. So in other words, let's not worry so much about the product. Theodore happened to have been manufacturing drills at the time. And the more he would focus on the drill, the less he would the less he would focus on the problem people are trying to solve in their lives, which is a 1/4 inch hole. So in truth, whatever product that he had, he could add all the features he wants, but if he lose sight of the job that product is hired to do, 1/4 inch hole, he's going to end up with features people don't need and products people don't want to buy. So again, we're moving away from products. And when I say products, I'm also talking about engagement. How many coffees are you having? Well, that coffee date that you have with somebody is a product. And that's part of your toolkit. That's one of the products that you have in your toolkit. But if you don't know why it is that somebody says yes to that coffee date, then you're going to end up worrying about, should I do an Americano? Should it be a latte? Should it be a tea? Should it be a lunch? Should it be a dinner? And you might totally lose sight of why it is that somebody actually said yes to the coffee date in the first place, which might be that they just want to be known, that they're new students in a school with 25,000 people and they feel like, oh my God, I barely know myself, let alone other people. I just want somebody who knows my name. I want somebody who thinks I matter and who's going to spend an hour listening to my story and integrating it and then trying to find solutions for the issues, things I've got going on in my life. Then it doesn't matter if it's an Americano or latte or decaf or soy. None of that matters. Now you know what the job is that they're trying to get done when they say yes to that coffee date. So there are two things that we're going to frame, that are going to frame this discussion. And I'll tell you about the actual theory in a minute. So jobs to be done. Why is the focus on jobs so important? The first thing is going to tell you what business are you in. Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks, very famously said, you need to ask yourself 2 questions every single day when you wake up to go to work, right? What business am I actually in? And if I went out of business tomorrow, who would miss me? So one of the story about Netflix and Blockbuster has been told many, many, many times. But what Netflix really started gaining market share and putting Blockbuster out of business when it realized that it wasn't in the movie business. It wasn't even in the streaming business. It wasn't in the documentary business. When they noticed that people would turn the TV off after 30 to 40 minutes. The concept of binging didn't come until about 7 years into their business after it exploded. People would turn it off after 30 or 40 minutes. So it tells you, what business are you actually in? Well, if you're Netflix, you're not in the movie business, you're in the 30 to 40 minute entertainment business. So now you know who you're in competition with. You're not in competition with the movie theater. You're actually fundamentally not in competition with Blockbuster anymore. You're in competition with a bottle of red wine that someone might have after dinner to entertain themselves for 30 or 40 minutes. You're in competition with that New Yorker, the most recent issue of New Yorker sitting on your coffee table that, by the way, people spend an average of 30 to 40 minutes reading. Once you understand who your competition is, then you know what business you're in. And then you know who, God forbid, might miss you if you go out of business. So now we're going to talk about milkshakes. I promised I would. Clayton Christensen is a very well-known innovator. He is a professor at Harvard Business. we work closely with him at CLAL, developing our innovation strategies. And he he created this idea of disruptive innovation. And you can probably ignore both of those terms because they've both been misappropriated and mistranslated so many different times that the idea of disruption and the idea of innovation are so far gone from what he actually meant. But he was hired by a fast food company a number of years ago after they had failed with their first set of consultants. The first set of consultants were brought on to try to figure out, how can we sell more milkshakes? So again, they already had the product in mind. How can we sell more milkshakes? So those consultants went around and they sent out survey monkey forms. Let's send a survey. If you were to drink a milkshake, what would you want in it? And then people, because they feel compelled to actually respond to a survey when they haven't done any of the self-work to understand why it is that they care about milkshake, they'll say, I want it to be more chocolatey. And this one will say, I want it to be more fruity. And this one will say, I want it to be chunkier. And this one will say, I want it to be thinner and thicker and healthier and less healthy. And so they kept tweaking. Franchise by franchise, they would tweak the milkshake recipe. And across all of these franchises, how do you think the sales went? Up or down? You need to show me with your hand. Right, down. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle's like into this. I'm into. All right. So they all the sales, the sales either went down when they tweaked them or they stayed completely flat. Nothing went up. The needle didn't move. So this fast food company fired these consultants, because why would you stick around with consultants who are doing a terrible job? So what they then did is they approached Clayton Christensen and they said, I want you to come in and help us understand this milkshake situation. Why is it that we can't sell any milkshakes? So Clayton Christensen sent one consultant instead of a whole team. And that consultant sat in the parking lot for the entire day. The restaurant was open for 18 hours. And the consultant sat in the parking lot for 18 hours and watched people. And anytime someone came out with a milkshake, he would take notes. And he would say, okay, this person is this old. This is the time of day that they're doing it. This is the size of the milkshake that they buy. This is the car that they go into. Are they alone? Are they with people? How are they dressed? What are they wearing? Whatever, all of those things. And they took down all of that data. And then the next day, many of the same customers came back around the same time. And this consultant would go up to people in the parking lot and say, hey, what job did you hire that milkshake to do? So now, I don't know if you've ever bought milkshakes at 7 a.m. from a fast food joint, but that's a weird question to get. Probably not something you're expecting someone to ask you. So he had to reframe it 10, 12 different ways. And what he was trying to figure out is, what business is this milkshake in? What job is this milkshake doing for the person? What problem is it solving? What progress is it helping them make? Right? It's not just about making them not hungry, because there are 50 things on the menu and they could have chosen any one of them and they picked a milkshake. So he asked things like, well, last time you felt the same urge that you did this morning, what did you eat instead? And someone said, well, I had a bagel, but the bagel was a little dry and the cream cheese got on my hand and I'm trying to steer the car while oh, okay. So that didn't work. And another time I had a donut, but the glaze got all sticky on my fingers. And then I had to clean the wheel. And then I was hungry again by 8:30. And then another person said, well, I had a Snickers bar once and that kept me full till about 10:30, but I felt terrible about myself all day because I had a Snickers bar for breakfast. So he said, oh, now I'm starting to understand what job the milkshake is doing. So then he tabulated all the data, and it turns out that about 60% of the milkshakes were sold in the first hour of business that the franchise was open to people mostly driving trucks who were going to work and had a 40 to 60 minute commute. So you're talking about the majority of your day's sales are to that tiny segment of people. So what job is that milkshake doing? Well, it's keeping them company on a lonely drive. It's entertaining them. Most of the cars they got into didn't have the high-tech stereo system. So it's entertaining them during the ride. It's keeping them company, and it keeps them full for as long as it needs to keep them full. And the most important variable of the milkshake is not chocolatey or chunky or fruity or healthy or fatty. None of that matters. Flavor didn't matter. The most important variable of the milkshake is how viscous it is. Because if it doesn't last for 40 to 60 minutes and entertain them for the entirety of the drive, it doesn't do the job. It does not get the job done. So the point is, all this time they had a product in mind, and they were so focused on tweaking the product and adjusting the features that they completely lost sight of the job that product was doing. Now, you don't need to go to Harvard Business School to know that one should never read off of a slide in the middle of a presentation or a webinar, so I'm not going to do that. I'm simply going to tell you to look at it later. The definition of a job is really, really important. The two most important things you need to know is it's not about products. It's about the problems people are trying to solve in their lives, and it's about the progress they're trying to make in their lives. So again, going back to this example of getting coffee with my local Hillel engagement person, what is the progress they're trying to, well, I'm trying to feel less lonely. I'm trying to feel heard. I'm trying to feel less anonymous in a sea of 25,000 people. Those are real problems that people are trying to solve. That's real progress they're trying to make, right? It's, by the way, why they might say yes to go to a Rush event for a fraternity or sorority. I want to be known. Oh my God, they have name tags at those events. They learn who I am. They care about who I am. Now, whether or not that's actually true, they care about who you are, I don't know. I didn't join a fraternity or sorority, but I don't hold it against anybody. Maybe it works. Maybe it gets the job done. And if it gets it done better than Hillel, then let's find a new job. All right. 4 principles, which I lay out here. And again, you'll look at them. One that I want to lift up is that the problems are timeless. Loneliness is a problem that has existed for the entirety of humanity. We have always struggled with loneliness. We have solved that problem many different ways over time. Another problem that is timeless. We've always had to find ways to get stuff from one place to another, right? So maybe we used a carrier pigeon 1,500 years ago, and today we use FedEx. But the problem is the same. The solution is different. Okay? Jobs there are 3 features that you need to focus on when it comes to the job somebody does: social, emotional, and functional. So the functional job that the milkshake is doing is it's feeding me so I'm not hungry. The emotional job is that it keeps me from feeling lonely with the thoughts ringing around in my head for 40 to 60 minutes and maybe keeps me from getting frustrated with all the traffic that I have.
How is this social? How is filling my belly social?
Yeah. How is filling your belly social? It is the interaction of going into the store and having a smile at you when you purchase it. Right? Now, that's obviously not the primary job. It's mostly emotional and functional. But that's a really important question. And how do I know that, by the way? Sorry, I should cite this, that the people who bought the milkshakes in the morning, even though they had a 40 to 60 minute commute ahead of them, they actually lingered in the store for longer than the people who were buying other stuff and going somewhere else. On average, the time that they stayed in the restaurant. Now, we don't know what they were doing in there, but we're assuming they were engaging with people and, that might have been a part of it. So here are just a bunch of resources. The way you get to a job to be done is you have to spend about anywhere from 15 to 60 minutes. And there's a really specific way to have the conversation with people to understand what the job is that they're trying to do in their lives, right? This is a really important factor. So I'll tell one other story, and that's this guy, Bob Mesta, another guy who we work with. He's out of Detroit. Among other things, has a real estate development company, and he decided he was going to start developing condos for empty nesters who were downsizing. Okay. And he did all the price research. He did all of the market segmentation research. He knew exactly who he was going after. And then he sent out all of these surveys. And this is around 2008, right? When the housing market was crashing. He did all these surveys. What do you want in a condo? Oh, well, here are the things that I really, really want. I want X, I want Z, Y, ABC. And he put all of them into the condos. And they had tons of people come to the showing, but only a tiny percentage of people were actually buying the condos. And so then he sent out another survey, and they said, you know what, it really is missing bay windows. So he went and probably spent $10,000 on every single unit and put in bay windows. He kept the prices the same. And he said, okay, I'm going to lose a little bit of money, but if I learn that bay windows is the thing, and guess how many more people bought the condo? Nobody. So he went back to the people and said, you know who I really need to talk to? I need to talk to the people who already bought my existing customer. I need to talk to people who bought the condos and try to understand, can you walk me through the moment from when you thought, I want to downsize, to the moment that you figured out, you know what, I'm going to buy this thing. And 9 out of 10 of them said, and they didn't know this consciously. He had to go through this entire process with them. It was once they figured out what to do with their dining room table. That if you've been in a house for 45, 50 years and you raised your kids there and your grandkids have come to visit, and that's where you ate dinner and you broke bread, and that's where you did your homework with your kids, and that's where you unwrapped presents and wrapped presents, and that's where you stared lovingly into your spouse. All of your memories are around that table. And even though the table is technically worthless, you can't sell it. You can barely give it away to Goodwill or Salvation Army, but you never want to get rid of that table. So they said it was once I figured out, I got over the anxiety of losing the table, that's when I moved. So you know what he did? He cut into the second bedroom, which, by the way, people just want to know that they have a second bedroom when they're downsizing. They don't actually care if it has any features, windows, doors. They don't care. They just want to be able to say, yeah, I have a second bedroom. The grandkids can come visit. So he cut into the size of the second bedroom, made the dining room much larger, and sales at a time when all of the sales nationwide and specifically in Detroit were down 49%. His sales went up 25%. When I consider moving to a new place, I want to be sure that I can keep my dining room table so I can hold on to the memories that I've shared around them and don't need to give that up. That's a job story. He's selling condos, but he's doing like psychotherapy, right? If he's not asking those questions and understanding it, he's missing it out. He's completely missing. So this is like an interactive piece of the webinar that if you want to unmute yourself, if you're brave enough to unmute yourself and you're not chewing gum, then please do that, or spit out your gum and hit unmute. We're looking at somebody who is waiting at a slow elevator, right? So jobs to be done helps you reframe the problem. This guy is looking at a slow elevator, right? He's like, oh my God, it's going to take, I got 8 floors to go up and I'm looking at my watch and it's taking a really long time. So if you were, let's say, the management company of the building, you might say, okay, well, if it's a slow elevator and it's really upsetting people, what's the simple solution for a slow elevator? I'm going to make it faster. So how do you make an elevator faster? Well, it's really complicated, above my pay grade, but those are 3 things that I read about how to make elevators faster. But if you actually spend some time with him and try to understand, why is this guy staring at his watch, right? Oh, that's a cobweb that's like growing. That's funny. All right, I just didn't even notice that. There's a little cobweb. Isn't that cute? All right, so what's the job to be done? It's about making the time waiting for the elevator less annoying or boring. So again, back to the job story. When I wait for the elevator, I want to feel less bored and less annoyed so that the time won't feel like I won't feel like I'm wasting my time sitting at an elevator. So now let's think for some other solutions. What are other things that they could possibly put there that can do that job and not necessarily make the elevator faster? Anyone have any ideas? Just chime in.
They could put some interesting artwork.
Oh my God.
Or flyers.
Beautiful. Interesting artwork or flyers. That was amazing, right? That makes the time waiting for the elevator less annoying or boring. Good. Give me one more.
Erica and I experience this every day at WeWork. We have the most slow elevators ever. And I have suggested to the management that they put up little word puzzles at the wall where you wait so that you can like try to figure something out in the time. Not it's so hard that you can't get it, but hard enough that it takes that extra time.
Thank you. All right. So you're all of you are very, very smart. You should have just slept through this webinar because you already figured it out. The solutions are, you got to make the wait feel shorter. So you can put up mirrors so people are like, oh, how do I look today? How's my hair? Is my keep on straight? Play music so it's less boring. Install a hand sanitizer. By the way, those things don't actually work. Studies across the board show that hand sanitizing doesn't actually do the job you think it's doing. It's actually just rubbing your hands together that does about 90% of the work. The soap only does about 10. But you put a hand sanitizer and it's boom, now I'm getting a job done. I'm in a public space. I have this cobweb on my leg. And so I want to, so you've got it. Great. So now we're going to look at the milkshake, and I'll skip this one because I want to get to the more important one. The job to be done in the milkshake, which we laid out, was in the morning, I want to make my commute less boring, and I want to feel less lonely or less bored during my 40 to 60 minutes on the ride. But let's think about it. They were trying to sell milkshakes. They already were obsessed with the product. They were bought into the idea that they needed to sell milkshakes. But what could they have, if they were any old company who was trying to solve that problem, what other products could solve the problem of a 40 to 60 minute boring commute and feeling lonely along the way? Anyone have an idea? Anybody listen to podcasts on the way to work? Right? Tell me podcasts couldn't have done that job. Now, of course, because they were in the milkshake business, they wanted to find a way to sell better milkshakes. But they were already stuck to that solution. They just wanted to tweak it. But in Bob's case with the condos, how could he do that job of making people feel less anxious about losing the thing? Not only did he change the way that the condos are, but he also, all of the costs that are associated with moving, packing everything up, putting it all in a truck, moving it, and unpacking it, which costs about $5,000 per family. He incorporated those costs and he hired other companies to do that job, all in the price of the condo itself. So he was able to think outside the box too and wasn't so married to the solution itself. So now we're looking at, I think this is Central Synagogue. It's funny, if you Google synagogue images, all of the sanctuaries are empty in the Google images, which is like such a haunting image, but obviously it makes sense for those synagogues that can't take pictures. But Central Synagogue did. I don't know when this was, but it looks like they were having a good time. So we're looking at Jewish prayer services as a product. What are the jobs to be done? I want to see, now obviously, if we were doing this right, we would spend some time with all the people who are going and do the job to be done interview, but let's just impose our will on them for a minute. What are some of the jobs to be done that a prayer service can do?
People feel like they're fulfilling an obligation that they have.
Great. Obligation. Good.
Connection to others, community.
Great. Connection, community. Good.
Connection to history.
Connection to history. Nice. Okay. I like that. What else?
I think like a break from life just to let your mind wander.
Wow. So it's actually a space, then it's not even about the prayers per se. It's just a space where your mind can kind of do what it's going to do, but you can do it in a safe sanctuary. That's great. What else? Any others?
The space to be thankful.
A space to be thankful. Okay, good. Okay. So obviously if we were to try to frame these and if we were to try to frame these into a job story, when I feel anxious about the way that the world is unfolding, it doesn't matter where your politics are, but things are unfolding in interesting ways since November. When I think about the way that the world is sort of unfolding, it makes me feel really anxious. And one of the ways that I cure that anxiety or feel better is gratitude practice. So I go to synagogue and I go to prayer services, and that's a place where I can experience gratitude. And by the end of it, I actually feel an alleviation of my anxiety because I understand that there's a lot to be really thankful for, right? So gratitude practice, what is another way? What's an alternative solution? I want you to just think about the job and then you'll know what business it's in. What's an alternative solution to going to prayer services in order to express gratitude or experience?
You could keep it in a journal privately.
Great. Tal Ben Shachar, who is one of the more well-known positive psychology speakers and teachers. He's also at Harvard, and Marty Seligman say the number one way that science has yielded in the positive psychology world, the number one way to embed gratitude in your life and experience it from soul and all the way up is a gratitude journal. They say if you write 3 things for which you're grateful every night before bed, it shows lowers in blood pressure, decrease in anxiety, lower depression, all of those things. So great. So now we just did the job, but it's in a different way. So
why are we trying to replace the synagogue though?
I'm not saying replace. I'm saying here's how you can try to understand what business you're in. Because if all we do is, if that is the job, if experiencing gratitude is the job to be done, that somebody who attends a worship service experiences, and all we are doing is figuring out which piece of chazanut we want to use for the Musaf Amidah, we may have lost sight of the actual job that service is doing for that person. That's not just, I don't think we should get rid of worship services at all. But this way you're understanding, oh, that's the job to be done. Maybe we should focus more on that and less about the other features. Does that make sense? That's an important question.
No, I hear it. I was understanding it wrong. I got you. I'm with you.
Oh, good. Okay, great. So that's one way to do it. And obviously, one size doesn't fit all. You can say, oh, great, the job to be done is about gratitude. And next week you have a worship service and all you do is thank God and thank everything. And it's all about gratitude prayers and gratitude experience, gratitude practice. And it could be your most poorly attended service. In fact, the person who told you that they want gratitude practice might not even show up. So it is not a one size fits all. Jobs to be done is not a one size fits all approach to innovation. But what it does allow you to do is get to know the people really, really, really well. So I'm aware of our time, and I'd love to spend more time telling you about how and how my wife and I approach that one size does not fit all solution for our kids. Top left is Nessa. She's 18 months. Bottom right is Micah. He's about to be 5 years old. And we have this ritual, Birkat Banim, at the end of, on Friday night. We love blessing our kids, but it turns out because we had really serious conversations, like really tried to understand from an empathic standpoint, this is like human-centered design 101, what is the user experience when I put my hands on my son's head? And it turns out he hates to get his hair messed up. And it makes him kind of feel weird to like have his hands on. So we do a different way to do it, and with Nessa, who's just starting to understand language, we do it in Hebrew. She doesn't really understand Hebrew. So we do it in Hebrew, and then we say something really personal about what it is that we are so grateful about her. And one thing we love so much about her in English, right? So one size doesn't fit all, but if you understand what the job is that ritual or that practice or that service is doing, then you'll focus a lot less on the product and a lot more on the person. So the second thing, and this is where I do want to close, is that understanding what jobs to be done, like I said, takes an immense amount of time. And that's something that Hillel does better than any Jewish organization in the world, right? Is that a premium on the amount of time that Hillel professionals and Hillel volunteers spend with constituents. You will never get that ratio anywhere else in any other Jewish organization outside of maybe a Jewish preschool, where the numbers are, federally legislated. And what that allows people to do is become known. And I think in this day and age, when anonymity is at a premium and we are like in so many different facets of our lives, feel like we might be swimming in a sea of anonymity and of not being known, people are dying to be known. They're dying to have their names known. They're dying to have their faces known. They're dying to have their stories known and repeated and honored and lifted up in a sacred way by the people that show them that they matter, right? Cheers. All right. So the four horsemen of Silicon Valley: Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon. If I were to ask you what is the single most valuable asset that each of those four companies has, which by the way they have in common, the single reason why they have the highest market cap of any four companies, the reason why they're growing faster than anybody else, it has nothing to do with the intellectual capital or the products that they produce. The number one reason why they're as valuable as they are is because of data. All the people that you interact with, and I'm sure if you have your iPhone on right now, your Facebook app is recording what I'm saying. It's probably saying, what is he talking about, right? But it's recording every single thing that's going on. It knows where you are. It knows who you're with. It knows what other stuff is coming up in your calendar. It knows your purchasing habits. All of those things are data that we give over to these four companies, not in some crazy like self-endangering way, but it's because we're willing to do that because every time I log into Amazon, it says, hey, Elan, how was that product that you how's that, those little juice boxes that you purchased for Nessa last month? Did those still work for you? Do you need another? Log into Facebook. Hey, Elan, don't forget your anniversary with your wife, Log into Google, it knows what you searched last time. Log into Apple, it knows your music preferences. All of those companies are log into Netflix and it tells you, oh, Elan, you like this, this, and this. You're going to like this, this, and this too. There's an intimacy that we actually experience with some of these technological interfaces and platforms that people aren't getting elsewhere. And when you really apply jobs to be done theory and spend the amount of time listening to people's stories and understanding where they came from and what jobs they're trying to get done in their lives, it is 50 times more impactful than sending out a survey and trying to figure out, what flavor milkshake do you actually want? And not only more impactful, but more effective, because when you start to craft, products and services and delivery systems around who they are and how they self-identify, then it's going to really impact their lives. And you have customers for life. You have participants for life. You have people who are never going to leave the system. So I'm going to close with that. There's other stuff to say about Moses, but a lot has already been said about Moses, so I will leave it. Feel free to open up for questions, and I would love to spend the next however much time we got, 15 minutes, I think, answering questions.
Friends, if you have a question, please just unmute yourself, share your video, and feel free to ask Elan whatever you can.
Hey, Tom Katz is here. Tom Katz. How are you, Tom?
I'm wonderful, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Good.
And because I have a face made for radio, I'm just on the phone.
Tom is a handsome man. How dare you?
I have a question. Do you find in your work with Hillels that Hillels seem to have the same job across Hillels, or do you think that Hillels have each particular Hillel has a modification of that general job?
I think there's a myriad of jobs to be done with Hillel, with folks on college campuses. I think there are so many different jobs to be done. The loneliness is incredibly important. The feeling noticed is incredibly important. The connection to community is incredibly important. The emotional support that people get is really important. I would say there are probably 10 or 15 different jobs that are a little more acute in one place versus another. For example, I'm here in Providence. Brown Hillel has a whole different set of jobs to be done than OSU Hillel. And part of that is because of the culture in Providence and where we're at politically. There's a lot of political stuff going on. So I would say the jobs vary really, really greatly. And it really starts with the job to be done of each individual person, which, you at Hillel already know that. I don't need to tell you that. But like for when I work with, rabbis who are trying to build the next mega synagogue and they have 1,000 families and they want to build it up to 2,000, I'll ask them, we'll be standing in the hallway if I'm doing like a scholar in residence weekend or something. And they're like, oh yeah, let's talk before Kiddush. And I'll say, hey, who's that person? And I'll say, I have no idea. And I'll business getting into the mega church business. Right. But if you ask someone at Hillel, hey, who's that person? Tell me their story. Tell me what, and that's because Hillel is obsessed with data. And the only way you're going to get data is if you actually know people, is if you actually honor each individual soul as like B'Tselem Elohim. And if you don't do that, you shouldn't be in business. That's how I feel. So knowing people is probably the core job to be done across the board. Every single Hillel, every synagogue, every new company is about knowing people. But those jobs differ, significantly across the board.
I had a quick question. This is Adina. I'm with Emily. Do you feel like there are any case studies out there right now? Not necessarily just in Jewish nonprofits, but any. It's nice to say Amazon's doing a great job, but I think for most of us, Amazon feels like a far better funded / staffed company. Like, do you feel like there are really great case studies out there? We were waiting for you to say like the milkshake company became Jamba Juice or something. Are there good people to like learn about who have been able to use this methodology and implement it well?
Yeah. Yes. So there's a book, Competing Against Luck, that Clayton Christensen profiles a number of different companies that do this really well. on maybe the 10th slide that I sent you, you'll see a podcast about jobs to be done with a guy named Bob Moesta. It's actually pronounced Mesta, but it's Moesta. He's from Rewired, the Rewired group. And Bob is someone we work closely with he and Clayton both are deeply committed to applying innovation theory to help religious organizations, spiritual entrepreneurs develop their organizations and really figure out what's coming next. So Bob is somebody who does that, I think, better than anybody else, really applies job to be done theory really, really well. Starbucks they know their job to be done really, really well. That's why they've spent so much money on infrastructure to have the best Wi-Fi available and actually have comfortable chairs. When other coffee shops were discouraging people from staying, they knew that you're not in the coffee business. You're in the killing an hour business.
Elan, can I add something to that question?
Yeah.
Just a thought? So, did you say is Emily? Who asked the question?
That was Emily Halpern.
Okay.
Tina. Yeah.
Yeah. So something I was thinking about when you asked that question is like a Jewish organization. It's interesting to think about maybe Birthright and its early success. I feel like if the job that they were trying to accomplish was giving young Jews a sense of connection to Israel, they were highly successful and like they're in their first chapter and iteration, because I think they understood that job and it was an extremely social experience, which for this age is super important. And then as the world changed, the job that was needed to be accomplished also changed. And so I think what I was thinking about that example was like the job that may need to be done, I think evolves over time. And as a producer of experiences, we have to recognize when the job that we're doing, which may be serving a certain customer base or client base or student base for a certain amount of time, shifts, whether it's because of like political things happening in the world or students' increasing desire to see Israel in a political light and understand how that influences their Jewish identity, but to have that really more at the forefront of their experience. Like, I think Birthright would have been, in my opinion, like an example of an organization that did this really well. But I also think like they have been maybe slower to catch on to like the changing need of their clientele.
I would agree with that. The only thing I would augment perhaps is that people were not hiring Birthright so that they could fall in love with Israel better. So they weren't waking up in the morning and saying, "Oh my God, I don't love Israel enough." Right? No one does that. That's not a thing, right? Maybe they were saying, "Oh my God, I don't know what to do for spring break," or "Oh my God, I haven't met any Jews on campus, and I want a place where I can go party with them," or "Oh my God," But so I would caution with the Birthright piece as an example of jobs to be done, with all due respect, because they did an incredible job, but what they were trying to accomplish was very different than the reason why people were hiring their product. Right? And that's okay if you're really, really overt about it. But I think in this day and age, a lot of Jewish organizations and Jewish philanthropists, the most well-meaning Jewish philanthropists, they wake up in the morning and say, "Oh my God, young Jews aren't marrying young Jews, and people aren't doing Jewish stuff. And oh my God, people are only doing one Seder instead of two, and people aren't celebrating Shmini Atzeret." I don't know what they're, right? But they're worried about one thing. So whatever products and services come from those philanthropists and the dollars that they're supporting does that job. Now, if they're able to create a product market fit where the people who hire those products and markets and services are interested in whatever it is that they're doing, as long as they're not being subversive about the ways that they're doing it, then you have a really good product and product market fit. But if what you're trying to do is make people more Jewish and what people are trying to do is feel more human, then you're going to go out of business in the next 15 to 20 years.
This is Michelle. I have a question. How does one or an organization keep up with this, right? There's like constant, like that, the job story is going to continually change. So how do you keep it? A, it will continually change. B, from a Hillel, in the Hillel context, you kind of alluded to this, not everyone's the same. So you have like, obviously you can group them together. Maybe you have 20 stories or 10 stories. I don't know what it is. So how do organizations deal with that?
Part of it is capacity. where Hillel, again, and I'm not just saying this, but Hillel probably does a better job engaging volunteers than most other Jewish organizations. And I say engaging, meaning they actually give volunteers meat on the bone. It's not just, will you be on the board? Great, we'll see you every month for a pointless conversation. It's, will you be a part of building this important organization? Yes, great. Here are 5 people I want you to go have coffee with. Come back and tell me how those conversations went and what you learned. So part of it is just being about building agility and nimbleness into your organization, right? There are the biggest organizations in the world that can turn on a dime. And then there are the smallest organizations that are like, you want to make change. It's like trying to spin the Titanic around, right? And it's all about how nimble and agile the organization is. The other thing is, there's a movement in the UK called 3DM, and it's a disciple-based movement in Christianity that basically it's one person works with 12 disciples because it worked for Jesus, so it can work for them. And those 12 disciples then, after a year of religious and spiritual and even physical formation, they work out together just in the mornings for an hour, whatever it is. After a year of that, they then recruit 12 of their own. Right? And that's how mega churches get built. That's how real serious movement gets built. But it's 12 people at a time. So the idea that in Jewish life, we've had an artificially sustained level of membership because 50 years ago, we were solving problems of, if I don't join a synagogue, my parents will make me feel guilty. If I don't join a synagogue, then Judaism will die at my feet, right? It was about guilt and alleviating guilt and avoiding shame and feeling like, or if I don't join a synagogue, I'm never going to find a Jewish person to marry. Well, boom, you got J-date, okay? So some of those problems no longer exist. So the size of a lot of synagogues is artificially held up. It's not that all of a sudden we're doing a bad job. It's not that all of a sudden rabbis forgot how to give sermons. Some of them are absolutely have forgotten, but that's okay, right? Those things haven't changed. It's that the value proposition has. Those are no longer problems people have. So now we got to figure out in this next round, what are the things that people wake up in the morning and say, oh my God, I feel like what's going to happen to the political landscape in America? I feel so lonely. Oh my God, I have 2,000 friends on Facebook and not one person called on the anniversary of my dad's yard site. Oh my God, I feel like I'm between jobs and I just want someone to talk to, right? Whatever those jobs are, if we can start doing the actual human jobs, solving problems that real human beings have, and not about making people more Jewish, but more human. Elie Wiesel said that 43 years ago when CLAL was founded. If we can do that, there's no limit.
Elan, it's Tom. I'll ask a question because when you have jobs that are what I'm going to call clearly stated from the outset, so the drill in the hole is an easy one. But when you're involved in human relationships, it's usually not that clear, number one. And number two, we know that each side to the relationship has their own separate job desired to be done. And I was just wondering if you had a word or two about what I'm going to call the negotiation between people as to how to define jobs, give people space for their job being, I'll use my word, I don't know the right word, inconsistent with your job, and not mutually exclusive, just inconsistent in some fashion. If there's anything you want to add about that. And the Hillel engagement is an easy one because if you're a student, you want to be, and I say this as somebody who is probably a parent age to everybody else on the phone. If you are a student and you're just lonely, well, I'll use that as an example, or you're excited about something, or you were always attached to something in high school, and you want to be attached to something in college too, whatever that might be. Well, obviously, as Hillels, we have a certain level of agenda that wants to help those people accomplish everything they want to accomplish, but also within our context. So it might not be the right organization for somebody who wants to, you know, fulfill all those things and make sure that it has something Christian associated with it. And I'm all for that, by the way, but maybe not in terms of what our resources are. So we are pushing often in any human relationship a certain level of personal agenda and seeking to impose that on other people's desired jobs to be done. And that's not always an easy negotiation process.
I completely, I hear that. I think it makes a lot of sense, right? I think one of the challenges is that the jobs are going to continually evolve, and in the same way that, you know, every marriage should look completely different every 3 to 5 years as it did in its first, you know, the previous iteration. Every, you know, parenting relationship should look different every 3 to 5, because, you know, there's the 5 languages of love. If 20 years from now, I'm still coming home with a bouquet of flowers and didn't notice that 15 years ago, my wife stopped doing the job, then that's why things change. Like, that's why relationships change. It's about constantly being listening and engaging and understanding what it is that people need. Now, in terms of, you know, and coming in with an agenda, I think that is actually a noble thing to name. It's a really important thing to name. I think if people get married and then all of a sudden, 3 years from then, one of the people says, well, so when are we having kids? And the other one says, oh, I didn't know you wanted kids. No, you got to be really clear about your agenda. I want to bring kids into the world. That's okay. We're Hillel. We want to engage you Jewishly. That's great. The key is finding a way to translate that Jewish wisdom and that Jewish experience so that it does the job. And I'm not saying objectifying it. I'm not saying it turning into some kind of transaction instead of transformation. But when we say engagement, in the way that the market is unfolding right now, if all the engagement does is gets the organization to feel like, well, that person did 2 more Jewish things, so we can call up the Pew study and make sure that they've got the updated numbers on how many people are lighting Shabbos candles. If we're not asking the question, does Shabbos candles help you feel more centered and grounded and remind you to take a deep breath before Shabbat comes in, and therefore help you be a better husband, lover, wife, spouse, whatever, then you know, again, it might not make it. So it's about constantly keeping your fingers on that pulse. It's exhausting. I worked as a community organizer. We had 81 different member institutions. I can't tell you how many times the stories changed and how many times the passions shifted. And that was in 2 years that I worked there. So part of it means like always listening and being curious. And when someone says I'm having a bad day, you know, don't just assume that it's a bad day because the weather's bad. Like maybe something really serious is going on. Or when someone says yes to a coffee meeting, don't just assume it's because they like coffee. Start to really understand, why is it what did you hire this coffee to do?
Elan, I feel like that's a good stopping place for us, because I just want to be mindful of your time and of everyone else's time. One piece that I feel like I heard from this that we didn't touch on, but I think it's a good call for each of us, is to ask ourselves in some ways, like, what job are our jobs at Hillel doing?
Yep.
And to better understand, are there ways that we can shape our own work that actually fulfill the role that our work is filling in our lives right now? So I want to thank you again, Elan, so much for joining us. I know you put a lot of time into putting this together, and I really appreciate it. We are going to share this webinar with everyone who's on the call, and also the slides. And I think Elan is including his contact information if you want to follow up with any questions. And I know we didn't get to it, but Elan is doing some really exciting work at CLAL that I had no idea about. And I know they're revamping their website, so I'm sure there will be more information to come, but you should really check out what CLAL is up to.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Faith.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for your great questions.
Thanks, Elan.
All right. Be well, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.